Bonjour à tous, bienvenue dans ce nouvel événement de la Success Week avec EduCarib. Je m'appelle Gwladys et je serai avec vous pour cette discussion virtuelle sur le thème de pourquoi choisir la Caraïbe. Aujourd'hui, nous aurons des étudiants, des entrepreneurs, des professionnels qui ont fait le choix de revenir dans la Caraïbe et qui partageront avec nous leurs raisons. Cet événement sera en anglais. Cependant, il est aussi à destination de notre audience francophone. Ne soyez pas effrayés, n'hésitez pas à commenter en anglais dans les commentaires. C'est la bonne occasion de pratiquer votre anglais, pourquoi pas dans le but d'une mobilité prochaine. Donc, surtout, n'hésitez pas à participer et à partager le lien avec vos réseaux. C'est parti, on va switcher en anglais. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this new event of the Success Week with EduCarib. My name is Gwladys, and I will be your host for this virtual discussion on why choose the Caribbean. Today, we have students, entrepreneurs, professionals who have made the choice to come back in the Caribbean, and they will be sharing with us why they made this decision. Please feel free to share the link for this event on your social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. You can share the link, and please feel free to comment and give us your feedback on your event. Okay, so we are starting to see our panel. Hi guys, please feel free to turn on your camera and your mic. All right, so Kamali is here, Elsie, Gilberto, Camila. Okay, I think this is it. All right, good morning guys. Thank you for being here today and basically sharing with our audience your experience. Maybe we can start, all of you can just quickly introduce yourself and tell us where you are from and probably where you are now. Elsie, do you want to start?
Sure. Good day, everyone. I know people are in different places, so I'll just say good day because I don't know necessarily what time it is everywhere. I am Elsie. I am in Guyana. So I'm a Guyanese, and I'm also in Guyana currently, so I'm happy to be at home. I am a sustainable community development officer by profession, and my focus is on urban and rural planning, and I use this in community development. And I'm also a mentor for young adults and for teens in the areas of career counseling, trying to figure out what to do with their life. And my motto is for everyone to try to live an intentional life. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and nice to meet everyone.
Larry, do you want to go next?
Sure. Bonjour à tous. Hi, everyone. So I'm Larry. I'm from Martinique, but I'm currently living in Jamaica as director of the Alliance Française. And I'm very happy to be with you today to speak about why choosing the Caribbean, because I made that decision myself. So I'll be happy to share my experience with the viewers. And I'm happy to see also familiar faces, Mike Rody. So it's going to be a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to share with everybody.
Great, thank you, Larry. Kamali, do you want to go next?
Good afternoon. As was mentioned, my name is Kamali. I'm from Antigua and Barbuda, and I live in Antigua and Barbuda. Where I am specifically, I'm at school because I'm a teacher. So I'm presently at school. So my students are literally behind of me. Yes. So that's about it for me.
Okay, I'm seeing Gilberto. Please say a few words.
Hello. I'm glad to see every single one of you. My name is Gilberto Morishaw. So I'm Partnerships Manager for ACP YPN, that's the African Caribbean Pacific Young Professionals Network. Next to that, I also work with a lot of organizations on the ground in the Caribbean. So I currently live in the Netherlands, but I work for a company called Colectivo, which is on the ground in the Caribbean, and we're trying to create a regenerative economy using cryptocurrencies. And next to that, I'm also secretary for a few foundations, and I'm a youth sounding board member for the European Commission, where I advise them on international partnerships and young youth.
Very nice. Thank you, Gilberto. Rodian. Hi.
Hi, Gwladys. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation to be a part of such an esteemed panel. Sorry, I just wanted to say a few words with regards to myself. So I am Jamaican by nationality, but I go back and forth between Europe and Jamaica, where I had founded a company called Longston International that is quite involved in promoting language travel within the Caribbean for Caribbeans, and to promote the Caribbean as a language travel destination. Outside of that, I do have quite a bit in the portfolio, but I'm quite passionate about diaspora development. So everything about giving back to the Caribbean, I am quite involved in. So that's it in a nutshell, and I look forward to sharing a bit more in the framework of this discussion.
Perfect. Thank you, Rodian. I think our last panelist is Michaela. Hi, Michaela.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Michaela Skeleki Cunningham. I am from Anguilla. I was born in Anguilla to Guyanese parents. Hey, Elsie girl. I am currently, well, not currently, I am a newlywed. I'm married to a Bahamian. I studied in Canada and the UK, and I could not imagine living anywhere else and taking my skills away from the Caribbean region. And so it was very important to me to be able to move back to Anguilla, specifically with qualifications in psychology and neuropsychiatry. Unfortunately, because my studies are not yet quite complete, I am back to my old job. I am currently a teacher of modern languages. I teach Spanish and French, and at the only high school in Anguilla. And I am very much ingrained in the youth development, youth work landscape here. I am the Dean of the National Youth Ambassador Corps in Anguilla. So I work very closely with the Department of Youth and Culture here in Anguilla as well.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Michaela. So we have several islands in the Caribbean working in other islands, married to other islands. That should be interesting. All right, guys. So I guess we can start. So we know that all of you are from the Caribbean. Did you guys have to leave the Caribbean in the first place in order to come back? Or some of you just have been in the Caribbean like ever since? Feel free to go. You don't have to raise your hand or anything. You can just speak.
Perhaps I could go right ahead and saying that I had quite a bit of a hybrid experience, if you wish. Larry will agree that we both participated in a similar type of program where it was the program France Caraïbe, which involved studying at the tertiary level, so undergraduate and graduate levels in the Caribbean and a little bit of Europe as well. And one of the really major positive points about this program is the fact that it did expose us. Well, I'm a Jamaican, but it exposed me to the French Caribbean. So that is it in terms of my university experience.
Okay.
For me, it was a bit different. I've never had to leave the Caribbean to come to the Caribbean. Besides traveling, I don't think I've ever had to survive outside. Born in Antigua, raised in Antigua, parents on both sides are Antiguans, grandparents on both sides are Antiguan, and great-grandparents on both sides are Antiguan. I've worked in Antigua all my life, and I'm now studying at UE, which is in Antigua. So I've been stuck here for generations.
My experience is a little bit different. While I did my undergraduate studies here in Guyana, I went halfway across the world to China to do my master's. So I actually got back last year, And I don't know how many of you have been to China, but it is a culture shock for a Caribbean person, especially one that looks like me. So it was a very different experience than what I had at the University of Guyana. Because for starters, I just look like a normal person in Guyana. But in a country that is predominantly homogeneous, I just stand out. So I would be walking on the street and people would be touching my hair and my skin and shouting random things, asking me, is this your real hair? Jenditopama, in just like Mandarin. So it was a very different experience for me going there. And then when I got back to the Caribbean, there were certain things I got used to in China, like taking a train instead of a bus. And so I had to readjust all over again. So that was my experience.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to go?
So as I mentioned before, I did my undergrad in Canada, and then I did my master's in the UK. And both of those countries are obviously very, very different to Anguilla. Anguilla is like a dot on the global map, and Canada is like never ending. I mean, I had friends from Vancouver who would always say, "Oh, it's so weird that your flight home is shorter than my flight home, and I'm staying in the same country." And that blew my mind, just the vastness of Canada. But then moving to the UK, how much smaller the UK was compared to Canada. I remember trying to go visit some of my cousins who lived about a 30-minute drive away. And I know that driving to Toronto was like 90 minutes from where I was going to school. And that's nothing to me. And I'm hearing my cousins complain, "Oh, this is such a long drive." And I'm like, 30 minutes? Where? What are we doing here, people? Winter it was the first time I had ever experienced winter in Canada. It was something. It was several things. And then moving to the UK and experiencing winter in the UK, people looked at me like I was an alien because I could not feel the terrible cold that they were feeling because I had just come out of the frozen tundra that was Canada. So moving back to Anguilla after being in those very frigid places for 5 years, I basically melted and then solidified and got right back to work. So it was very different. I had to make a lot of adjustments in terms of, you move on island time when you're home. And in places like Canada and the UK, when they say they're starting at 9, if you're not there 10 minutes before, you are late. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Would you guys say that you had to come back in the Caribbean or you really wanted to? Well, come on, maybe not for you. But for those of you who studies, obviously, I know that some students sometimes they have government bond. I think that's the name where when they go study in a different country, they have to come back and work for maybe 2 to 3 years. So did you guys really wanted to come back or you had to?
I think that when we go study abroad, there is also the fact that we realize how much we miss our own country. Well, that was the fact for me. Coming from the French Caribbean, we don't have that much opportunities when you're reaching a higher study level. You really have to migrate. For instance, for us Martinicans, we have to go to France. But this experience really made me realize that I was Caribbean, and that I felt the need and the love for my culture, for my people, and that's why I wanted to go back. And I think that many of us, we live on small islands, and we don't realize that it's a low paradise, and that's when we migrate that we really understand that and we want to come back. Well, that was my experience.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
Okay, for me, it's a hybrid experience. While I wanted to come back, I do have a government bond to serve. And it is not 2 or 3 years, it is 5 years.
Oh.
Yes. So at the back of my mind, when I was going to study in China, I knew that I had made a commitment to my country, not just by signing a contract, because that's a contract I chose to sign, but I made a commitment that I would go educate myself further and I would come back with skills to be able to develop my country. So even though I had the opportunity to work in China, I interned at my university in their international office, and they were actually trying to convince me to take a job at the university to make a negotiation to get out of my bond to be able to stay there. But I just had to say to them, I made a commitment, and this is a commitment that I need to keep to my country. I did miss Guyana, but I think that because Guyana is a little bit different to the other Caribbean islands, it's much bigger in terms of size, but also in terms of diversity. We have 6 different major ethnic groups. So there is a lot of diversity that I experience from day to day. I think that made me not miss Guyana so much, because I just considered it like another part of the Guyanese experience, because we do have Chinese in Guyana as well. I actually have Chinese ancestry. So this was like learning a little bit more about where a part of Guyanese culture came from. And I actually was able to see some cross-section of things. Because, for example, we have this dish that we eat in Guyana, very popular, called chow mein. And that is actually chow mien in China. And that is where it came from. So that was very interesting for me. So while I wasn't homesick, I did know that I wanted to fulfill my commitment to my country. And so I did come back.
Okay, interesting. Gilberto, go ahead.
Amazing. I love hearing all these experiences. I think for me, so I currently still live in the Netherlands, but I think the thing that sets me apart in that sense is that I am very committed to what people are doing back at home in Curacao. So I'm from Curacao, so we're part of the Dutch Caribbean. So in that sense, there's a very close relationship, kind of. But right now, I'm very much connected to organizations on the ground. I represent Dutch Caribbean people here in the Netherlands, and I'm constantly going back to Curacao, working on projects there, trying to fund right now food forests. And I think one of the big lessons or the big interesting things for me is that when you are away, you are also able to see yourself better. Often, when you grow up into a culture, you're formed, but you don't have a bird's eye view of the culture you are born into. And then when you leave and you go to another country, not only do you get a bird's eye view of their own culture, so the culture of the new country, but also of your own culture back home. And you can critically self-reflect in a way that is useful about, okay, which elements within my society are good and helpful and are things that strengthen and empower me, and which things did I receive that aren't always helpful, and how can I unlearn that which is not useful and double down and then strengthen that which helps me to go further.
Okay, so are you?
I want to add something to what Gilberto just said.
Go ahead.
So, as you mentioned, I would have never lived, so to speak, outside of Antigua as some people. But one of the things that I have done often, I do travel a lot. Anybody who knows me will tell you, once you give me a plane ticket, I am there, present, pleased, and very special. Right? And so it has allowed me to travel to the United Kingdom, to travel to China, to travel to the United States. And on each of those trips, it wasn't a 1 week, 2 weeks, but it was a situation I spent an extended time period. And so it allowed me to realize, as Gilberto was saying, the differences between where I'm from and where these people are living. And so part of the reason why I've often told people I could never live anywhere else, because I have realized how, even though we are small islands, we live better than a lot of people all across the world. Billions and billions of people around the world are living in abject poverty, and we're in the Caribbean buying KFC on a regular basis, right? And so when you're able to see these
especially
things,
in Jamaica.
Especially in Jamaica.
I'm a vegetarian, cannot relate.
So let me tell you something. When you look at how us as Caribbean people live, you get to realize and appreciate it. Because very simple things, the ability to walk into a hospital and the first question being, what is wrong with you versus do you have health insurance? Right? For you to walk on the street and, you see your friend, you see your cousin, you see your grandfather, everybody in the Caribbean, his family, versus, as I can identify, going to China. When I went to China, I didn't have my hair in locks as I do now, but my hair was in a big afro. And having these random little white ladies walk up and just put their hands in my hair. And I was like, if you weren't old, I'd punch you in the face. But it allows for that introspection. And I think from traveling as vastly as I have, nowhere else. I'm sorry. Nowhere else but the Caribbean.
Thank you, Kamali. That was actually one of the questions. But Gilberto, you said you are in the Netherlands. Do you plan to ever go back, maybe? Or you are okay just being in the Netherlands and contributing basically from a different country?
I mean, I love home. I really do love Curacao. I love Curacao, and I do want to come back. I think for me, it's always about where can I be the best of service. Can I be the best of service there on the ground in this moment? If the answer is no, then I'll be of service here. So I think redefining this concept of what home means for me, that I can be at home there and at home here and still connected to there without having to be specifically on location. I think that has definitely changed the whole ball game for me, because I would love to be back in Curacao, and then certain things that I'm doing right now, I won't be able to do it from there. For example, next week I'm going to be heading to the COP 26 to talk about climate justice and to speak with a lot of policy people. When I'm back home, I'm so much farther away from that stuff. Or for example, this Saturday we're organizing this huge climate march with like 30,000 people. And then the opportunity that I always have is how can I bring home within these spaces? How can I tell the story of the Caribbean where I am at? How can I free resources and free opportunities and connect people on the ground with opportunities from Europe and all of this stuff and make it so that it is of service to bettering our societies? That's where I'm at. And I think it's important to be at home too, which is why I'm planning on going back home for at least a month in December. Because you gotta reconnect. If you don't reconnect, you're gonna get crazy. So I'm very happy back home, but I'm also happy that I get to be connected to home even as I'm here.
That's very nice. So for those
There's
of
something.
you, oh yes, go ahead.
Sorry,
Nikki.
there's something that Gilberto would have said that really resonated with me about trying to figure out where you are of most use to your home. Elsie and I have very, very similar scholastic experiences. I did go away to study on a government scholarship, and I am also in year 2 of my 5-year bond. So I am here for a while. But I would say I did have the experience of wanting to, of being offered jobs in Canada and being offered a job in the UK. Very much a very, very similar experience to Elsie. And in retrospect, it's not that I regret my decision to come home. I do believe that I should have fought a little harder to stay where I was in order to completely make myself most useful in my field, so that when I come home, I would have been able to start right away offering services in mental health at the level at which I would be able to do so independently. At this moment, I am qualified up to a point to work as an assistant or to work as a research assistant, but I do volunteer my skills with the local psychosocial support network here. But it's, for me, I do not feel completely fulfilled in what I am doing just yet, because I know I have not been able to meet that mark of being able to optimize the skill that I would have started to train, right? That I would have started to develop. And so a huge factor in my experience currently is timing. I just like Kamali, the most dramatic panelist, as we can see. Just like Kamali, I could not imagine living anywhere else, raising children anywhere else. I don't want to raise my children in a North American context. I am sorry. I lived in situations where I was afraid for my life as a Black woman, and I don't want that to be my experience, my children's experience. I think that a lot of things have to do with timing. A lot of decisions are very difficult to make, and you have to learn to make that leap of faith. And if I'm being very honest with myself, and I'm about to be very honest with dozens, hundreds of people, perhaps right now on this live, I genuinely feel like I should have waited a little longer and fought for myself so that I could better help my country. It's not to say that I'm not doing a good work and I cannot come down as a teacher, but teaching, while I love it, it is not my passion. I am a mental health advocate through and through, and I'm languishing, not being able to function in the full scope of my area of training. And so it is very important for those of you considering whether you're coming back home or not. Timing is everything. And sometimes somebody is going to be disappointed. Do not let it be you. Don't let it be you.
Wow. Thank you, Michaela. You said a lot of gems. And I'm going to ask something probably more for Elsie, Larry, and Rodian. Are you all working in the field that you study? Or were you all able to work in the field that you studied when you came back in the Caribbean? Because I know it's an issue for a lot of people.
Maybe I'll probably take a jab at this. And I think, well, what I studied initially was politics and international cooperation. And throughout my trajectory, I basically did internships throughout the semester. So once I finished a year of studies, then I'd be interning at a government ministry or somewhere else. And in that kind of perspective, I was able to have that kind of hands-on experience. But I think post that, all the other professional experiences I've had, I've been able to use my degree, but indirectly, whether it's in my capacity as vice chair of a particular diaspora task force, or with Gilberto, as we both work with ACP-YPN and any policy influencing action that we have to do. But in terms of my day-to-day life, what I do with Longsell International, it is really narrowly related to what I actually studied.
For me, interestingly, I did my first degree in international relations. And so the job that my university was offering me was in that field.
Okay.
But I did my master's in urban and rural planning. And since I've been back, that's the area I've been working in, because I work in community development. And community development is directly related to how you're organizing not just the infrastructure, but the industries. And that is heavily related to urban and rural planning. So I am working in my field. So I am satisfied with that. I have not begun serving my bond as yet. I'm actually working with an NGO. I hope no government people are watching this live. But I will begin serving my bond soon. There's a process for you to get called and get appointed to a position within the government to begin your service. So as soon as that happens, then they will determine where my services are best needed. But I did not want to wait to be placed in a position, because I've been back from since last year. I decided that I was going to go out there and I was going to put my skills to use where they were needed. So I understand what you're saying, Michaela, in terms of volunteering where your passion lies, because I think that that's important while you wait to really cement yourself in the position where you want to be. So that's what I'm doing right now, full time, working with the NGO in my actual field of study.
Yeah, I wanted to share my experience on that regard also. When you're planning to come back to the Caribbean, I think you must also prepare your coming back, because for me, I was in a rush. I just wanted to leave France and go back home. And the reality is that we're living on small islands, so the job market is also pretty small. And once you've understood that, sometimes it can really be difficult to be working in the field that you want to be working in. And for instance, for me, I didn't. When I came back home, I was working in something completely different than what I studied, and it took me 1 year to actually find a job in international relations, which is what I studied. And that was very frustrating, because I was seeing my friends who stayed home, no, not home, in France, having also well-paid jobs. And when you're going back to the Caribbean, sometimes when you hear about the salaries that are offered in our region, I mean, it's really is a choice where you have to consider what are the pros and the cons of going back, because most of the time when it comes to the salaries, it will be lower than when you are in like a big income country. So you really have to consider all that. But at the end of the day, with patience and dedication, you can indeed find yourself and be useful for your country.
All right. Thank you, Larry. So, Kamali, this question is for you as well. So, like Larry said, I think Rodian mentioned it, and I'm seeing a comment from Gabs saying that sometimes the field we study are so technical and almost foreign to the region. Taking that into consideration, we go overseas, we specialized in fields that are not necessarily developed in the Caribbean. How were you guys able to to basically find opportunities in your field so that you don't feel like you're making a sacrifice? Like Larry said, seeing your friends probably in bigger countries making money, more opportunities. How did you guys manage that part?
Perhaps I could go ahead and just, well, I wasn't sure if it was directed at Kamali still, but one of the things I really wanted to emphasize is the fact that having lived in different contexts, I think one of the advantages of the Caribbean is that there are less barriers, entrance barriers, for example, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur. And even while I was doing my studies in the Caribbean, I decided to explore that option of becoming an entrepreneur. And I thought that just in comparison, that sort of ease of access, the Caribbean definitely has that advantage. And by being an entrepreneur and having had experiences where I was able to eventually put my degree to use, whether if it's not something that calls for this qualification, nonetheless, I was able to mobilize my knowledge and my skill sets. So it's just to say one of the ways in which I was able to do that is by creating opportunities for myself in the Caribbean.
I'm sorry, Gwladys, I missed a question because one of my students distracted me. Can you repeat, please?
It's okay, Kamali. I saw the papers and everything going on your screen. What I was saying, so for you, you said you've always been in the Caribbean, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a fact sometimes, Larry said it, in the Caribbean, we are smaller islands, less opportunities. How are you working in your field of choice?
Not yet, because I haven't finished my bachelor's degree. I'm actually in the process of finishing it. But when I do, I will be able to. But it's two parts. Because one, my interests are law, history, and politics. Those are my three interests. And so I am slowly but surely accomplishing some of those goals. Presently, I didn't share this before, I am the president of the National Youth Parliament Association. I am also the founder and the first president. I am also the chairman of the WCS Youth Advisory Network. I am presently writing a book on the history of my country's oldest political party. So my general interest, all three of them combined, I found a way to combine all three. And one of the things that I often say to people when they say, oh, there's no opportunity in the Caribbean, I said yes, because whereas a lot of these other countries would have had hundreds of years with millions of people to start a lot of these processes, most of our countries, well, in the case of Antigua and Barbuda, we celebrated our political independence, which is 40 years, not yesterday, the day before. So technically, Antigua is younger than my mother. And so we're in a state where we can't expect opportunities to appear, but we must be the individuals to create those opportunities so that when our children come around, they don't say, oh, there's no opportunities in Antigua. But they will say, oh, my daddy created this and I'm able to enjoy XYZ, XYZ. I think that's where the Caribbean is. Because we also need to be cognizant. The Caribbean suffers from the fact that we were never, though people have lived here for hundreds of years, we were never developed. We were extracted from. We were taken from. There was no emphasis placed on developing the Caribbean. And so we're in this stage where when people say there's no opportunities, my number one question to them is always, so what did you do to create an opportunity for somebody else?
All right, so would you guys say that somehow, relating to what Kamali said, that our generation may have to make that sacrifice of, well, I'm not sure if it's a sacrifice, but basically being the ones to create the opportunities for the future generations, as opposed to going overseas, maybe doing bigger things, getting more money for it. What do you guys think?
I am here to slide right into this question because I wholeheartedly agree with Kamali's assessment of where we are positioned. Again, we all come from countries. I don't even live in a country that is independent. Okay, we are still a British overseas territory here in Anguilla. Anguilla did not get widespread electricity until the 70s. All right, so we while I'm not saying that Anguilla is severely underdeveloped, Anguilla is a small, literally small, tiny island developing state. We are still very much developing. There are certain things, certain basic, level infrastructure that I would have enjoyed in Canada and the UK that I took for granted. I could walk down the street and not need to put data on my phone because everywhere has Wi-Fi and it's open. And so you just hop from one network to the next. But here, you don't have any data, you're done. You can't communicate until you top up your phone and you're ready to go again. Certain things we take for granted when we go out and then we come back, and then we do realize that, as Kamali said, and I completely, wholeheartedly agree, we are the ones that need to take that step to create space and create opportunities for our fellow young persons and for the persons that are coming up, that we will help to raise, we will help to develop them. I mean, when you, again, I just admitted to a couple hundred people that, I do think that I did not make the correct choice in coming back at this time, but I would have never decided to leave my skills and leave my passions where I would be one of thousands of faces when there is not even a single neuropsychologist in the Leeward Islands. Not even on Anguilla, but in a chain of islands, there is not one, not a single one, So why be part of thousands of a legion of persons where there is an excess? The field is oversaturated. The field has developed. It's almost plateauing. Well, not neuropsychology, but still. When you can come back and you can, number one, offer these services, number two, offer opportunities for persons to, train under you, to learn new skills, to expand their horizons. Because one of the things that happens in a small island state like Anguilla for sure is that you develop such an insular mindset. There is more than just the blue horizon on the crystal clear blue waters. There's a big wide world beyond that. And I believe when you go beyond that horizon and you bring that back, you open your mind and you open your fellow compatriots' mind to the possibilities that exist out there, and you show them that just because it's out there does not mean it cannot be developed here. You know, open their minds to the possibilities and find a way to make space, find a way to present those opportunities, find a way to bring them back with you. Nation building is in everybody's blood. And we need to take a leap of faith there, yes, and just do it, like Nike.
Yeah. I just wanted to chime in here.
Elsie, just a minute, because I know that Gilberto has to leave us, right?
I think he already left us.
Oh no, he's still there. So just for our audience listening to us, Gilberto, what would be your advice on why choosing the Caribbean, or why, if we go away like you, still making a conscious decision to be involved in the Caribbean development? So just before you go, just answer that.
Definitely, that's a good question. I mean, I think it is definitely about this idea of one, giving back, but also being a pioneer. We are at the front line of creating new nations. We are at the front line of creating a legacy for our societies that is transformative, and we have the unique opportunity of creating that ourselves. We're the people that history books are going to be writing about because of our because of the youngness of our nations, because of the newness of our systems, the power that we have into leading in a new era of justice and of innovation and of change in a good sense is powerful. We are one in a few, while maybe in a European country we might not even actually have the opportunity to really show our true colors and what we can do. And a lot of these countries that we have lived in, they have systems that are very much cemented into place, and change is very difficult to happen there. But where we are, change is happening, and it's happening fast, and it can happen faster as we build our communities. It is much more accessible towards us, and we have the knowledge of both worlds, as Hannah Montana would say, the best of both worlds. And I think we should never forget that when we choose the Caribbean, we're not just choosing a location, but we're choosing the idea to write our own stories. And that we keep this commitment toward this story writing, that we understand that it doesn't happen in a day or in a week or in a year, but that if we keep on doing it, if we will reap if we do not give up. And that's something that nobody can take it away from us, because we might be the first doing this. Michaela, you're going to be the first neuropsychologist, and all of us have been doing things that nobody has had the ability or the opportunity to do before, and then we're doing it with ease, and then we are the first of many. And I think that if we continue to sow these seeds within our society, in our community, we will live to see the day where the Caribbean is standing on this pedestal of this is how reality can be. This is how communities can work. So I hope that this message stays with you. You are the bringer of light for your community that has been pushed into darkness by oppression, by enslavement, by colonialism. We're breaking these chains, and we're not just breaking these chains to be free on the terms of what was meant to be, on the terms of the oppressor or the colonizer or the white man, but we are breaking these chains to create a new reality that we are imagining ourselves, and that we may keep this with us in mind when it gets tough, when it gets rough, when it gets hard. We remember who we are and who we're becoming.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Gilberto. I'm so sorry you have to leave us. But thank
So
you.
inspiring.
Yeah, you should be a motivational speaker. All right, I'm seeing Gil. Oh, yes. You are having great comments. Gilberto, you are so right. Fully agree. Seeing people clapping hands, goosebumps. Thank you, Gilberto. Oh, you're welcome, of course. It was our pleasure. And anytime you can come back.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye-bye. Elsie, I'm so sorry for cutting you off. I think you are going to say something after Michaela.
Yes, I wanted to say that coming back and staying is a sacrifice. I want to put that out there because it's the truth. Even though we were born in this space and it is our duty to develop it, it is also a burden because Caribbean society, the politics, the governance systems that we have, they are remnants of colonialism, but that has made them very tribal and very toxic. So young people have a difficult time trying to infiltrate those structures and trying to really make a difference in the areas that is needed. And so when we go out of the Caribbean and we live in various countries and we see the efficiency, we see the ease with which certain things get done, you start to get comfortable and you start to feel, okay, I can develop my full potential in this place. I can just wake up in the morning, set a goal and go out there to achieve it without having to worry about what this political party is doing, what that one is doing, this person trying to steal my idea or to, they don't like the idea, so they'll try to undercut it. Because we're such small societies, that happens very often. And I understand some young people not being able to deal with the pressure and the burden that is placed on them, saying, okay, you have to be the one to change that. You have to be the one to make the difference. But by the same token, there are some of us who choose it for ourselves. And I respect that because I'm one of those persons who chose that for myself. When I was in China and I saw all their innovation, they're like at the highest point of innovating in their society. I didn't even understand how much of it they were doing until I sat in a bullet train and they said to me, oh, this train is just moving extremely fast. And I was like, but I'm not feeling anything. And then I looked out the window and I couldn't make out any shapes. It was just colors. Everything was moving like this. And I was like, okay, this is not the exact thing that I want for Guyana, but this is the kind of innovation that I want for Guyana to be able to solve our problems. And this is the kind of innovation that I want for our region. And so I said to myself, not only do I have a responsibility to come back and to push for change and to be a part of that change, but I have a responsibility to ensure that we reach at the highest point of our innovation. Because why am I going to add my skills and my knowledge to a country that already has that in excess till they've reached their highest points of innovation and leave my country with the thought of, okay, we can just go about on Caribbean time, everything is okay the way it is, and not try to come back and push us beyond to where we ought to be. And so, yes, we're in the embryonic stage of our development. And yes, it's difficult to be a part of that because of the challenges, but I think we owe it to ourselves and to the future generations to do that. And I also think that just as we're connecting here in this kind of forum, we can connect to share ideas and to talk about how we deal with some of these pressures and some of these challenges. Because let's face it, suicide is high in our region, in the Caribbean region. And there's a reason for that. Young people are frustrated. Young people are feeling pressure. But by the same token, we want to make sure that the generations coming after us can have, these kinds of comforts that we've been able to enjoy outside of the Caribbean region and better structures to support their development as well.
But I want to add something that I think is important to note. Am I allowed to?
Of course.
Okay, I'm going to do something with you guys that I do with my students, right? Now, see what I'm seeing in your mind's eye. Something that is very important to understand. When you talk about development, innovativity, sustainability, progress, there's always one dominating factor. That nice thing that goes this way and it curls with an S, that whole aspect of money. No, I think one of the greatest problems that we've had in the Caribbean is I think we have the talent and the capacity and the ability, particularly in our young population, to do amazing, wonderful, miraculous, large, big things. The main problem is our broke, as we would say, right? We don't have the money to finance it. And so when you look at, for example, an island like Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago's progress, particularly when it comes to public infrastructure and a lot of other things, is far more advanced than even an island like Jamaica. Though Jamaica is large in population, Jamaica and Trinidad cannot be compared side by side because Trinidad has the benefit of oil money. You look at islands like Antigua and Barbuda with a reasonably sized population, but an economy dependent on tourism. And in the age of COVID, you can only imagine how that has impacted the economy of Antigua and Barbuda. Now, when you look at all of this in retrospect, you start to realize we can do great things. We have the capacity to do the great things. We have the educational institutions to enable the great things, even though the University of the Stressed Indies will literally drive up your blood pressure. But the dominant issue that we have is the lack of money. Now, when you look at a country like China, I can't even imagine how much money the Chinese government taxation revenue from a population of 1.6 billion people. If they were to give us 1 year of their national budget, Lord have mercy, I think every Antiguan would be living lavishly, right? And the development and innovativity that can come from that would practically be unmatched anywhere in the world. And so I am very happy looking at a country like Guyana, because Guyana has multiple things working on their side. They have discovered oil, they have the revenue of oil, they have an expansive landmass in terms of what is considered their legal boundaries. And so they're in a place where if they use this wealth constructively, and not for petty partisan politics like building a road where two people live, but if they were to use this revenue for something that is constructive and innovative, Guyana and countries like Trinidad and Tobago can literally enable the development of the wider Caribbean. Because if Trinidad develops, if Guyana develops, and if Guyana says, hey, Antigua, we have been able to expand the University of Guyana, send 10 people here to work. And Guyana says, here what? We have so much money in oil money, we're going to give you $1 million to fund this program. So in addition to training 10 of your citizens, we're also going to give you the financing to develop your initiative. Then you can see the literal transformation of the Caribbean. Because again, as I would have mentioned as a teacher of history, we were never developed, we were extracted from. And so we would have financed the development of other people. And so when you look at countries like the United States, France, Spain, Holland, and the rest of them, they owe us a lot because their development is based on the extraction from the Caribbean. And so for me, I think we are in a state where we need to realize, look, what resources do we have? Who has the wealth? Who has the money? How can we share? How can we integrate? Instead of, as our Prime Minister would have said, everybody trying to be king of their own pile of ashes. Because at this present moment, that's what everybody's doing. Everybody's trying to pursue development on their own and not looking at how can we develop corporately. So when I look at statements from the Prime Minister of Jamaica, when Brexit happened, he said, oh, we need to assess Jamaica's worth in CARICOM. I was like, you're an absolute idiot. You're a bold-faced, unrestricted idiot. Because instead of you saying, how can Jamaica further integrate with the rest of the Caribbean? How can Guyana further integrate with the Caribbean? How can Trinidad and Tobago and Anguilla, etc. further integrate? You're looking at how can I pull myself away? How can I pull myself away? And that's sad. So I appreciate islands like Guadeloupe and Martinique that instead of pulling away from the Caribbean and saying, oh, we're French, we're good, have taken the step to join the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, to integrate in the operations of CARICOM, etc. Because it shows that, okay, yes, I'm technically a part of a European country, but at the end of the day, I'm Caribbean. Yeah. And so for me, if we were to work together, I think our development would be busted. Here endeth my sermon. This is the word of the Lord. No, don't want no things.
Thank you, Kamali. Larry, so how was it for you coming from the French side of the Caribbean? You came to Jamaica. I live in Jamaica right now. I know that Jamaica is very different from what we are accustomed to. How was the experience and why did you make that choice?
Well, thank you, Gladys, for this question. As much as it's different when it comes to the language, obviously there was a language barrier where I had to learn standard English, but also Jamaicans, they just speak in patois to you sometimes, so I had to adapt myself to that. At the same time, what I love about this region is that every island I go to, I still feel at home. You know what I mean? Like, the people, they look like me, they eat like me, they dance like me, they behave like me. And I didn't have that same feeling when I was living in France. Even though I'm a French national, my passport is French, I speak French language, I didn't feel culturally fitting in the French society now that the way I feel fitting in the Jamaican society. So I say that it was really easy for me to adapt myself. Also, we can't deny the fact that the Jamaican influence over the Caribbean is really huge when it comes to the music, the culture. I mean, I grew up in Martinique, but since I was a little boy, I was hearing dancehall and reggae music, so I was used to that. And for many French Caribbean people, it's actually a dream coming true, going to these islands, because as Kamali said, for so long in our history, we've been away from everything happening in the Caribbean. I mean, even now, traveling in the region is so difficult. It's more easy for me to go to Paris than going to Jamaica, which is completely, it's really in this difficult to grasp. Jamaica is right there, and it's also very expensive. So we really have to work on also the mutual understanding of each other's, and that's what I'm trying to do as a Martinican, as director of the Alliance Française. It's showing Jamaicans that it's not just France, but you also have your Caribbean brothers and sisters out there who are Martinique and Guadeloupe, and you need to know about them also. And that's how we can strengthen, I think, the Caribbean, because we need to interact much more between each other, and especially from the French side, because for so long we were away from everything happening. We just joined the OACS, and I'm really happy about that. But we have to learn also how our Caribbean neighbors do and work, how they govern themselves, because it's new for us.
Excellent. Michaela, I think you wanted to say something at some point. Are you still here?
Yes, I most definitely am.
How is you?
I was very, very moved by Gilberto's parting words.
Okay.
And I continued to be moved by Elsie's follow-up to that. And then Kamali just roused me to action, because at this point I figure he's probably the next president of whatever reiteration of the West Indies Federation we may probably ever have again. Don't fix your face like that, Kamali. You know what I'm talking about. Between you and Elsie, set it up. So one thing that I cannot stop thinking about was when the word sacrifice was mentioned. And in my personal story, again, I can go back to my grandparents. None of them had anything more than a primary school education. And they left willingly so that their siblings could be able to continue their education. Okay? And without my grandfather's sacrifice, we would not see literal politicians sitting in the house of sitting in parliament in Guyana. Okay, my grandfather is the middle child and left school so that his brothers could continue their education, and one of them went on to be one of the founding fathers of Guyana's independent government. All right. My grandmother, his wife, was the oldest and never went beyond primary school either. And she did so in order for her younger brother and sisters to, for her mother to be able to afford their schooling. And they all became teachers, with the exception of my grandmother's youngest sister, who ended up working for the UN. All right. My parents, they themselves made sacrifices so that my brothers and I could have access to opportunities that we never would have been able to have being raised in Guyana. I shouldn't say never, because that's not true. It's completely untrue. But to be quite honest, comparing your chances of being able to grasp opportunities in a country where there are about 13,000 persons versus 700,000 people, the chances are slimmer when your base expands like that, right? My parents left stable jobs. They left their comfort zone behind. Initially, they left some of their children. And then when they were settled, they were able to bring them and give them more scope, broaden their horizons. My brother and I, who lived here with my parents, were then able to go to university, and my parents did not have to pay a thing because we were both able to profit from scholarships available here. Whenever I hear the term, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, I'm really getting emotional because I was so close to both of my grandparents. And I do not ever take their sacrifices lightly. When I think about me having to sacrifice certain things in order for the betterment of my family, but not just my family, my country, because while Guyana is where my parents come from, I won't say that I don't know it enough to care about it. One of the things that I want to be able to do is work in both Anguilla and Guyana to bring whatever services is necessary in both places. I have my eyes set both north and south. You understand? So for me, when we talk about sacrifice, when we talk about linkage, there is no way that one Caribbean country is able to profit from just one person's skill and one person's sacrifice. We are too interlinked for that not to be the case. You understand? And so when I say that I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, I stand on the shoulders, I stand on the foundations of their sacrifices, and it makes it all the more easier and all the more meaningful to make sacrifices of my own for the betterment of not just my family, but also my region, my country's, my region. All right. So I'm really getting a little choked up here, but it really means a lot to me to be able to share this, because I think sometimes we just think about the drudgery and the mundane things. We think about the happy and the fluffy, and it's always essential to ground yourself in what the reality of your context is. And for me, the reality of my context was, again, I mentioned it before, the timing of my return wasn't, I don't think, right. It wasn't optimal, but there was no way I was never going to return. And the second thing, the sacrifice, it's inevitable. It must happen. It must happen. We're not able, when you climb to the top and when you're on the summit of all of your achievements, what good is it to stand at the top and just enjoy everything, enjoy the view alone? When you climb at the top, you turn around and you extend the hand down and you pull up with you, because there is no point in getting to the summit and enjoying it alone.
Wow, thank you, Michaela. That was powerful, and honestly, it's making me think and remember why I chose to come back in the Caribbean and why I need to keep um, doing it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, Anybody want to add anything to what Michaela just said?
Yes, please. Michaela and I actually met in another life while I was actually living in St. Kitts, when we were both in sixth form. And we found that she was of Guyanese parentage and I was too, but we were both living in different places. So that was interesting. And it's interesting that we're connecting here and talking about this. But I also wanted to say that one of the things that I wanted to caution young people who are up and coming and thinking about making these sacrifices and thinking about how they can initiate change in the region, I don't want to mislead you. I want you to know that one of the biggest things is, even though people move between Caribbean countries, Caribbean islands all of the time, at the national level, the countries still remain insular. They still operate in a vacuum. There are so many things that we still do not know about our Caribbean brothers and sisters, how they live on a day-to-day basis. I am still in discussions where people say, oh, the island of Guyana, but Guyana
Okay, I think we lost Elsie. Okay, she will probably be back, but for those of you who are watching us, whether you are a French or English speaker, you can actually join the live, ask any questions that you want, or maybe you want to share with us why you are choosing to live in the Caribbean. So please feel free to use the link that you are seeing on the screen and join us. Okay, I don't think...
I have a question for you, Gwladys.
Oh,
so why did you choose to the Caribbean? Come back.
I don't know if I made that choice. So basically, I left Guadeloupe when I was 18. So you would know when after your baccalaureate, after high school, you are just kind of expected to go to France, right?
Right, yeah.
And I had found this school in Barbados where you could just go over there for a year and learn English. So I was like, oh, wow, I want to learn English. And it's amazing because from my first week in Barbados, just being around other Black persons, did not speak the same language, but like you said, the food was the same, probably just cooked differently, a little bit more spicy. The music was not the same, but I could still dance. Like, I said it recently. It was, for me, it was, wow, I have so many cousins that I did not know. And I was like, why am I going to go to France in the cold, feeling like a foreigner, like I don't belong to this place, when I have all of these opportunities in the Caribbean? And I just stayed. I stayed. I eventually went back to France to study. But as soon as I got an opportunity, I came back. I just...
Came back.
Yeah, like there is no question for me. That's where I belong. So I always pick the Caribbean, but I can definitely identify with everything that you guys have shared today. Kamali was amazing at what he said, and of course, we are even Guadeloupe and Martinique. Yes, we are part of French, but when you look at the island in terms of development, we are still young, and I think we have more to learn from the other islands in the Caribbean rather than France. It's impossible for us to catch up to France. But if we associate with the rest of the Caribbean, maybe we can grow. And I love that. Oh, so I see that Elsie has left the live. Okay, let me just check the chat. In the meantime, all right, I'm going to look at the comments. I saw, so this was interesting. Lack of diversity in skills in our region opens the possibility for us to do something great. Kamali touched on that. And oh, this is good as well. So today is Dominica's independence. Happy Independence Day, Dominica. Shout out to all the Dominicans here with us today.
Yeah.
And maybe you guys would want to answer that. I think Rodian, of course, you are an entrepreneur, so you would be able to speak on taking the entrepreneurial route in the Caribbean.
Well, it's really, as I said, I alluded to earlier, the fact that a real major plus in the Caribbean is the fact that there are less entry barriers if you want to become an entrepreneur. I'm happy to have been able to seize the opportunity at the time and even now. And all that to say, when you talk about the question, why choose the Caribbean, it's also important to know that choosing the Caribbean is a continuous thing. It's something that I continue to do, even though I am sometimes geographically located elsewhere. My heart is still in the Caribbean. It's all about giving back. You don't have to be in the Caribbean to choose the Caribbean. And of course, just to eventually answer that question, choosing the Caribbean to eventually finally establish myself there. That is eventually my end goal. So yes, do take the entrepreneurial route, because in the Caribbean compared to elsewhere, the entry barriers are minimal.
Excellent. So I think we touched a lot on what is not working the best in the Caribbean. Kamali touched on it, but now I think we should talk about what is great. Are you raising your... Yes, go ahead, Kamali. Oh, no. Okay. So yeah, we touched on what is not working best in the Caribbean, the challenges. Okay, let's switch now. What is great in the Caribbean? If you had to convince... Yes, Kamali, you're next. If you had to convince, I don't know, a student or someone who is hesitating to come back, what would you tell that person?
Social mobility.
Oh.
Social mobility. More so in I would say the I don't know about for Jamaica, because I have a bit of issues in regards to this with Jamaica. But in general, social mobility in the Caribbean is rather easy. You can be born very poor, but through hard work and more than likely successing in your academics or whatever field of study, you can end up living a very prosperous life. So case in point, Antigua in our 40-year history has had 4 prime ministers, which in our case is the head of the government. All 4, well, 3 of the 4 were born in poverty, and all ended up being the head of the government. One in particular dominated Antigua's politics for 60 years, starting from an impoverished child. And when you look back at it, it is the ability to be educated, because in most of our countries, well, I can speak specifically to Antigua, primary education is mandatory and provided by the state. Secondary education is mandatory and provided by the state. What we would call lower tertiary, which is like college, like, you know, that associate's degree level, it is state subsidized, and the government will provide scholarships for you to go. So it's almost free. When you look at university, in the case of countries like Antigua, we have something called the Prime Minister's Scholarship Program, which presently has over 1,000 students studying at the University of the West Indies, studying in China, studying Azerbaijan, studying in Russia, studying in Cuba, studying in Estonia, etc., etc. And then again, you have what is called in Antigua the Board of Education, which is another state institution that also provides scholarships to students. And of course, we also have a UE campus here. So because of the fact that education is usually the key to social mobility, the Caribbean has an excellent education system. Really and truly, I think the Caribbean's education system is unrivaled only by places like Switzerland and China, etc. Which is why I understand why countries like Canada love Caribbean teachers, Because
But
with very
also
little,
consider the fact
we
that
make-
they have those resources,
right, we make a very great impact. And so for me, I think our ability to move up the social ladder, we have very easy social mobility. Because you can start from selling some coconuts on the side of the road, some coconut water, and people pass, hey, $5, and and then you're able to pay for university, and you're able to become doctor, whatever, with 10,000 letters behind your name, and you run a regional entity. And so for me, I think social mobility is the best thing in the Caribbean.
Nice.
I want to say here, I think the people are the best thing about the Caribbean in general. Just again, Caribbean people have I don't even know what word to use. Resilience just seems so, I guess maybe because it's a word that I've heard very often between 2017 and now, it has lost some of that, that deep resonance for me. But the Caribbean people are just so resilient. They are just so innovative. I've never heard of a country making cars out of wood before. But my father told me that in Guyana, they did that in the 60s. Who does that? Who does that? Caribbean, we understand how to make so much out of so little. Imagine if we had access to the resources that would allow us to create even more, allow us to access even more. Again, as Kamali would have mentioned, I do agree, our education system is unparalleled, but at the same time, again, I like to be a little sobering in my analysis here. Unfortunately, because of the approach to our education in the Caribbean, our exceptional students tend to be the ones that benefit most from our exceptional educational system. And so there is still so much work to be done there as well. We have to find ways to make education more accessible. We have to find ways to instill or to reinvigorate that value for education that our parents and our grandparents had. Because as a teacher, I'm very concerned about the fatalistic attitudes of some of my students, and it's starting as young as 11, 12, where you're hearing children say, well, I don't know what I have to do this for, because, well, I could just go and work in the hotel. That is something they're aspiring to, work in an entry-level job in the hotel. When we make those inroads, when we make those sacrifices, when we make that serious step towards understanding that we ain't make it till we all make it, essentially, that's when this region will be unstoppable. I've never been a fan of cricket, but the West Indies cricket team is the one thing that regional integration got right. We're going to talk about that later. But West Indies cricket team is the one thing. We don't use an anthem from one country for that team. We use an anthem that was written specifically for that team. And I have been able to watch small island cricketers play in that team on international levels. You understand? So the people, people are always at the heart of development, and Caribbean people are always full speed ahead. There is no stopping us. There is literally no stopping us. That is what you will not find if you do not come back home, because you might find pockets of your people elsewhere. And when you connect with them, you will still feel that sense of no stopping us. It's unstoppable when you get together. But oh man, you come home and you're just surrounded by all of your people from different islands in your own island. That is a feeling unlike any other. The people is what makes the Caribbean absolutely great.
Thank you, Michaela. Elsie, did you hear the question?
I didn't.
Okay, so I was saying that we talk about the limitations, the challenges in the Caribbean. So I was asking the panel, what is great about this place? If we had to talk to someone who is considering moving to the Caribbean, what would we say to that person? So Michaela and Kamali went. So now it's between you and Larry.
Okay, I'll go because as you can see, I'm having internet troubles. That's part of my Caribbean reality. But I'd like to say that the enjoyment of life is one of the things that I find that's the best part of the Caribbean. Because I know that when you're living in other places, there's pressure to earn and also to find a stable place to live, to have enough money to support your standard of living. But I find that it's fairly easy to live in the Caribbean with very little. And that can be considered a negative, but it can also be considered a positive because it gives persons who have very little the opportunity to dream and to use what they have to get from point A to point B. And also, I find that I could not live alone in an apartment by myself in China, for example. It's much too expensive. And here in Guyana, I do live by myself in my own apartment. I'm able to earn enough to support myself, to be able to go out and enjoy the different parts of my country without worrying about, oh, it's too expensive, or I'll never be able to do this, to do that. So I find that living in the Caribbean, because of how our society is organized, you get to enjoy a little bit more than you would if you're living in a different place as a Caribbean person, but also as a person from that country as well. And I also think that the warmth of the people, not just the climate, but the warmth of the people is unparalleled. Because I walk down the street in the morning in Guyana when I was living in St. Kitts, when I visit other Caribbean countries, and I say good morning, and people shout back good morning. In China, I kid you not, I said good morning in Mandarin, of course, Zhao Shang Hao, and people are looking at me like,
Yes, you're the weirdo for saying good morning to people.
is she okay? And I would hug my Chinese friends when I meet them, but hugging is not a big part of their culture. But here in the Caribbean, we're very warm, we're very friendly, we're very expressive. And that is not the same in a lot of the other places that I've been to outside of our region. And I absolutely hate that. So I know that I'm a Caribbean person at the core, at my heart. And so I enjoy the experience of interacting with my people, of saying hello, of talking to strangers on the street. And that makes life a little bit easier, especially when you have to deal with all of the other pressures. And that is my pitch for coming to the Caribbean. Come enjoy your life.
Thank you, Elsie. Something that you said, I remember when I moved to France, I was shocked. Like I would get on the bus or the train and say good morning, and no one would reply. Or like look at me like, what is she doing? Larry, you next.
What can I say? Maybe because we have the most beautiful woman in the world in the Caribbean.
Why, thank you. Thank you.
I know that's
No,
right.
but yeah, seriously. I think most have been said already, like the people and the culture. For me, Caribbean culture is also one of the most amazing in the world because we tend to forget, but globalization actually started in the Caribbean. You know, we were the first places in the world where you had influences from China, from Europe, from Africa, from all over the world, from the Middle East, coming into those small islands and making their own culture, what we call in French creolisation. I don't know if it's the same for English, but this phenomenon of people from all over the world and making one country, one culture, I just find it amazing. And I mean, in the food, you can find that but in the warmth of the people. And let's say also that we live in beautiful places. I mean, look at the beaches of Anguilla. I've been to Shoal Bay, and I was like amazed. When you are in Jamaica, you have those beautiful rivers. We live in paradise, basically. I don't have to buy winter clothes. I don't have to. I can wear the same clothes all the year. Um, and yes, I mean, the Caribbean people are some of the nicest I've encountered in my life. I've also traveled quite a lot. And as we've said, we are young countries, young nations. So everything is also up for us to build. So even though there are big challenges, um, as we said in this discussion, we can be the pioneers that create those new opportunities, and we have to build our own countries. So yeah, man, the Caribbean is, I think, the region of the future for sure.
I don't know if anyone said the food, because
Yeah, the food.
when I travel, it's very hard to eat because Caribbean food is unrivaled. They don't cook like us, y'all. They do not.
So you said food. So I realize that this is my avenue of conversation, right? Y'all jumped in my bandwagon. No, I'm gonna give you a story so that you understand what culture shock, definition of culture shock. Now, as my good friend Lai would have mentioned, the Caribbean is not even the few. The Caribbean is the only place on earth that you've had a mixture of every single class, race, creed, food, culture, ethnicity, religion, everything in one, right? And so that has created absolutely marvelous, wonderful, magnificent food. Let me tell you. No, the first time I went to the United States, I was 16. And then I've always heard people say, no, Americans don't cook like us. But, me coming from my little 2x4 island, I didn't really think it was all that bad. I went to a restaurant in JFK, and they said, oh, we have burgers and this. I said, you know what, let me tread light. Let me tread on light ground. And they said, okay, I want a burger. I bit into the burger, and I was chewing. My brain was cognizant that there was something in my mouth. However, my taste buds weren't responding in the same way. Right? My taste buds were like, no, something missing. And so from since then, once I travel outside of the Caribbean, I always walk with a bottle of hot sauce. And so you can imagine the look of immigration officers when looking at me, they're seeing this bottle of hot sauce in my bag. And they're like, what exactly is the purpose of this? Because I said, hot sauce solveth all problems, right? We have a particular style of cooking. And I think a lot of it comes from, one, the influence of Africans, because a lot of our food patterns, because our diet is very starch-based, comes from that whole African aspect. And then when you talk about things like curry, oh, bless the name of Jesus.
Bless curry, man.
Oh, bless the name of Jesus.
You're all welcome.
Yeah.
When you talk about curry, and I remember the first time I tasted stuff like, Lord, what they call it in Trinidad?
Roti, doubles
and roti, and Caribbean KFC, because even American KFC don't taste like Caribbean KFC, So let's just add that in the mix as well. We have a particular style in which we cook our chicken, right? Traveling outside of the Caribbean when it comes to food, you cry, you bawl murder.
And you starve sometimes. But
and you also begin to realize, though, you start to realize, boy, a bottle of seasoning is really a very essential thing in life.
But I forgot to tell you guys that I'm wearing this here because tomorrow is actually Diwali in Guyana, or Deepavali, the Festival of Lights. So one of the things that we get to experience here in the Caribbean is the celebration of other cultures. And for Guyana, it translates into lots of holidays. So tomorrow is actually a holiday in Guyana, and this is a part of Indo-Guyanese culture. So every Guyanese will tell you, I'm pretty sure we have the most holidays in the region, and we revel in it.
Listen,
Do you guys beat Trinidad in terms of holidays?
Sorry?
Because I know in Trinidad they also have a record of holidays because of
Yes.
But again, that's that whole Indo-Caribbean and Afro-Caribbean mix, right? So you're going to get all of those interruptions in regularly scheduled programming, because those are the two countries in the Caribbean with the highest, volume of that kind of population. I have to say, when I was in Canada, one of my friends laughed at me and told me that I dare wear every pan knock I dare. And I was like, what, why would you say that? I'm a good noodle. I come to school, I do my work, I all work and no play makes Jill a dull girl. And she said, well, I don't know. She's from, gosh, I'm blanking. She's from St. Lucia. And she said, every time the Indian Students Association is having something, you're there. This other association is having something, you're there. You participated in the Eid, celebrations with the Muslim Students Association. And I'm like, well, again, my parents are from Guyana. My mother grew up in Berbice. That's not where Elsie lives, guys.
I'm Berbician, though. I'm Berbician.
Well, we know so. You from there, but you ain't living there right now. That's out there. She's from Rose Hall, which is like a really historical town in Guyana. But Rose Hall has a very high Indian population as well. And a lot of those Indian inhabitants are also Muslim. And so my mother literally grew up. Her best friend was an Indian girl, an Indian Muslim girl. The other best friend was an Indian Hindu. And she grew up celebrating everything, coming home multicolored from Holi. And then her friends are coming over to help her make kites to fly for Easter. All of these things are just, it's the magic of living in and being from Guyana. Because even though I was not raised there, my parents made sure I had a very Guyanese upbringing. And so even at home in Anguilla, we're on the phone with my cousins, talking about whatever is going on, in Guyana at the time. So I still was able to resonate and connect with those cultures. And when I went away, oh gosh, I fit in everywhere. So yeah, the multiculturalism, the food. Also, I'm gonna need the global north to defund oxtail, please. I don't understand why the price is so high. Please stop it. You are depriving people of excellent food. Please to stop. Stop gentrifying oxtail for me, please. Whoever is listening, we need Kamali and Elsie on this as the co-presidents of this union. Please fix it. Fix it, Jesus. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. We are about to wrap up. If anyone wants to add something, this is now. But thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate you. Rodian and Gilberto had to leave, but you guys, thank you. Thank you, Kamali. Kamali, are you still here? I don't think he is. Michaela, Larry, Elsie, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And please feel free to come back and reach out to EduCarib anytime you want to share and be involved. And to our audience, please feel free to check EduCarib website. We have more events coming up for the Success Week. Of course, the goal is always the same, promoting the Caribbean as a destination of excellence. Our participants shared it today. There are opportunities in the Caribbean in terms of education, professional opportunities. Larry mentioned the beautiful women, the food, the culture. It's basically our responsibility to make the Caribbean a bigger and better place. So again, thank you all for being here with us today, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you
Take
for
care.
having us.
everyone.
Bye. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Kamali.